Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and today and for this build I built around the new Crucible staff. Geomantic, whatever. It has a bunch of random level 30 support gems, and if you get the right one with the right combos, it can prompt a bit of a build. So essentially what I did is I found a couple of my own, and they were nothing too special, but there are lots and lots on the market. So I just went to the market, typed in Ice Bite because that's what I felt like building around, and then started scrolling through a lot of stuffs until I came across the right stuff that looked like I could make something out of it. I had no intention of playing any brand action, but there was a staff that had some Swift brand on it and a few other things, and then I thought, okay, I could make a really decent sort of brand character out of that, and then went towards a whole idea about doing Hierophant, scaling Arcane Surge, and doing the brand node that Hiero has with one of the brands. So it ended up being Stormbrand, and this is the resulting character. The staff that I picked up was one divine, but you can also merge them in the Crucible. That is the very, very end game one. So I merged it with something that had Arcane Surge, and the resulting staff let me play this build. So we've got Ice Bite, Immolate, Arcane Surge, Conk Effect, and then I attached, as well as Swift Brand, and then I attached Stormbrand to the main setup, and we're basically building around lots of added damage from Ice Bite and Immolate. Conk Effect also actually happens to affect Stormbrand because the main damage that it does is AoE, it seems, on the target that it's attached to anyway. And then I decided to build around lots of power charges, so I can have lots of frenzy charges with Badge of the Brotherhood, and that gives me all of my damage, Immolate plus Ice Bite. The resulting build is pretty decent. It's it's a very nice character because brand characters pretty much always are. The question though is whether or not it's really worth going into the staff too much. It's pretty simple to build into with just a one socket, and then it takes care of your entire weapon toolkit. So for that, it's pretty comfy and nice, but you're probably still better off scaling triple damage stuff, or potentially just regular Stormbrand with really big weapons or some shit like that, or void batteries. But so far, I think this has been pretty worth it. I've got 10 million almost brand DPS, and that seems to be very, very reliable DPS. So if you have just a couple of brands up and then run around, that DPS is almost as good as an Ignite, essentially. It's just going to be ticking, it's going to be doing really good damage, no matter what you're doing as a character. With the Swift brand playstyle though, it does mean that your brand is only 3 seconds, so you have to reapply pretty often, so it's not going to be one of those set it and forget it style situations for 5 to 10 seconds. You do kind of have to still be recasting every now and again, and Hierophant has a ascendancy that makes the brand tick way faster when it's coming down to its last few seconds, or its last second even, so you got to basically let it expire and then reapply. Either way, it's been really good. Brand characters, just super smooth playstyle. They're some of the best starters in the game because it just scales nicely and has a really solid playstyle. This character is somewhat thick, even though it might not look it, but I'm almost never taking damage, literally taking a couple of points of damage per map, because all you're doing is running around, chucking a brand down. It zaps around everywhere, it freezes things, and all you do is just run around and avoid damage. But it is very nice being a tri-elemental playstyle, because that means we can freeze, shock, chill, and then also take care of pretty much any rare monster mob that comes our way. So cycling damage reduction doesn't really matter. The only thing that potentially matters a bit is temporal bubble and crit resistant, but we've been managing with that too. So the end game DPS so far is looking pretty good. I've yet to take on any really big content, but good solid chance that this can sweep all the Ubers. Going to be a tough build to recreate though if you're going to try and follow in my footsteps, because you really won't have the same staff almost ever, and that's kind of the point of the staff. work with what you've got. And like I said, I essentially just scrolled through stars until one of them inspired me. There were quite a few on the market that certainly could inspire some builds, and that's what I encourage you to do if you want to play around with this stuff. If you don't like doing that sort of thing, then it's better to just follow a build that has some more static items in it, like void batteries or annihilating light triple damage stuff. But the take-home message is brand playstyle is still pretty goddamn good, especially with Stormbrand. It's a super comfortable mapping build and then pretty good for deep single target as well. Let me go ahead and show you how I've built the character. So here's the character at the moment. Like I already showed, the staff, Geomantic, Gyre, a bunch of spell damage, a bit of crit, and a whole bunch of random things that you basically, ideally, to actually use this stuff, you pretty much need to have a 5 path so that it becomes a 6 link. Even like the most ideal extra 4 link that turns into a 5 is barely going to be like worth using, I think. So building around Immolate and Icebite at level 30, or added cold, added lightning, things like that, pretty damn powerful because they have huge scaling, but you still kind of need good supports beyond that point. So just having a four-way is really going to be tough to justify, though in some cases it still might be worth doing. I do recommend going for like 5 extra pathings, so something like this, or we can go that way or that way. As long as it has a longer pathway to make a 6 link, then it's kind of worth building around. And as I said, you kind of let the staff do the thinking for you, so you look at it and see what you can do with it. In many cases, there's not enough synergy to put things together, and you won't really be able to justify building around a lot of the staffs. This one did the talking for me. It said play brands, and I built, like I said, a Hierophant around it that scales Arcane Surge. So this is a pretty powerful new node. Arcane Surge grants 20% more spell damage to you. You can then scale that shit with Arcane Surge effect, and in essence, with all the Arcane Surge effect and everything I've done from there and a bit from there, this is worth like basically a Berserker node, like 40% more damage. We've also got bit of quality of life throughout the rest of it, essentially. So we've got charges, min endurance feels really good, min power feels pretty decent. We have max power charges, so then I can go into Badge of the Brotherhood, and my max power charges equal my max frenzy charges, and that's why I can sit around and have 8 frenzy charges for my Ice Bite to be kicking some ass. If it wasn't for the Ice Bite, I don't know if I'd be really doing this method, but Badge of the Brotherhood's pretty cheap, and it's always a really good way of scaling damage with Frenzy and Power Charges. Typically, Void Batteries are the way to go because you can get up to like 10 instead of what I'm doing right now, and that gets quite a bit crazier, but that's what I'm rolling with. And then beyond that, basically built a pretty reasonably generic spellcaster and brand character. I initially wanted to go block as well, have like full block for stabs, spell, and attack, but it's just too much to fit in if I'm trying to scale Arcane Surge, if I'm trying to scale brands, so I didn't end up doing that. And especially as I was running around playing the brand character, I realized I don't get hit almost ever, so kind of whatever. That said, still built a bit of thickness, so I do have the endurance charge. I do have some fizz damage reduction, a good pool of armor and energy shield. So our damage reduction is decent. With flasks up, it's better, and with a molten shell, it's pretty good. And then using a bunch of energy shield as a buffer as well, and running petrified blood. So that's for low life, puts me at low life, but the hits that come in get mitigated to some extent, will give me a chance to recover. So that's what we're dealing with. The passive tree is, I've been trying to min-max it and stuff. I'm still going for a dual socket here, but essentially just went for 1 cluster so I can get more Arcane Heroism, increased effect of Arcane Surge, some really kind of crappy looking Megalomaniacs. I'm not too happy with these. Like, it might not even be too worth doing a cluster if we're fully honest, but a bit of Zealotry Reservation and Arcane Heroism over here as well. I wanted to stack more of these, but the Megalomaniacs around them just weren't super cool. Even just like regular dual sockets with a bunch of crit multi might be better, but maybe not even having to build a cluster might be better, and instead you can like kind of do some other things, get some crit multi or some damage and stuff. But I had to do this big travel to get to pain attunement, a bit of crit multi, using a Watcher's Eye just for zealotry for crit and cast speed, which is 1 divine. Otherwise, yep, brand nodes, stuff like that. We've then grabbed a chest here, did dense fossil spam. The entire point of this chest is just for armor and energy shield, so that I could take advantage of this mastery over here. 100% increased armor and energy shield from body armor if I've got armor and ES on all my other gear. Had to roll some elusive boots, so you can do that very reliably just by spamming crit rerolls on harvest with redeemer boots. Some really basic as fuck temple gloves that just do damage against chilled enemies. Unnerve as the implicit there is pretty good. Forgot to mention here, the gain frenzy charge every 14 seconds is how I sustain frenzies on single target or in plenty of situations. Ideally, frenzy on hit is a lot better, but this gets the job done too when Ice Bite is already generating a lot of frenzies from killing stuff, and then these boots start your charge campaign during any fight that you really need them on. So yeah, that's what's happening there, and that's how I'm getting frenzy sustain. And the charges here are just an MTX that you get from Mystery Box, Planetary Orb for your charges. Grabbed a ring to try and fix all my Chaos Res, so put quality on it, Elder Ring, and then just rerolled Chaos Res or Chaos from Harvest over and over until we got this. Got this one actually really early, pretty lucky, fixed a lot of res. Overall, I am pretty comfortable in res, and I can get even more if I need to, so it's not a huge deal to have something this resist heavy, but that's what happened. And then Mark the Shaper, grabbed a belt, needed some dexterity, and rolled Dex Essences until some other shit happened. Got some strength, life, resist, not too shabby. This hat was pretty damn good for power charges though. Picked this up off the market for 2 divines. No one else wanted it, I guess, but it's pretty much got everything I wanted. So another power charge, a little bit of damage, multi, some strength, and life. Don't have a helm enchant though, which is a bit unfortunate, but I'm not even sure what I really want on this character, so the brand helm enchant isn't great. Reservation would have been good, ultimately. Certainly could have helped me fit in auras better and all of that. But you are trying to get a max power charge on the hat. You can either get it through an implicit, corrupted, lots and lots of hats out there with that, or roll it yourself as a warlord hat, maybe Awakener Orbit. But this is what I'm dealing with because it was 2 divines and I thought super worth it. We then have Herald of Ice and Arrogance attached to Clarity as well, so that's taking care of my life reservation. Running Determination, Enlighten, Petrified Blood, and Zealotry on my mana with a good decent chunk of spare mana, but I am casting off of my mana, so it's got to make sure we have decent mana regen, and Hierophant kind of takes care of that, and then when Arcane Surge procs, it gets even better. But Arcane Surge will be up 100% of the time whenever you're attacking something. We then have Lightning Warp. I do love a good Lightning Warp setup in a caster because it's pretty snappy and just a really good movement skill and defensive option, offensive option. Righteous Fire for just pressing if I really want big damage because we don't sustain it at all. It's purely for let's try and kill something before it kills me sort of situation. Self-Curse Sasmark, Frostblink, and Molten Shell. For the most part, the build had a lot of spare sockets a lot of this time, and I was just filling them to do things. But yeah, so far that's the character. Will highly recommend brand playstyle. Will recommend messing around with these sorts of staves. Both pretty fun, but brands are pretty damn good. You can definitely make a lot of viable builds with them. And I forgot to mention, I also took the Inquisitor ignore monster res nodes, so that was like 2 divines for the combo, something like that. But typically a good brand build is probably going to be more of an Inquisitor than a Hero, just so you can actually have this without having to steal it, and then it fixes all your crit and some regen if you want. But yeah, there it is, Storm brand, very good stuff at the moment. And Arcanist brands, not Arcanist, Armageddon brand is pretty good too. I did try out Penance in this build, really not a big fan. It Clear's okay, but the single target's just kind of whatever. You got to wait for this delivery system, and fuck it, just run Stormbrand. But yep, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the character. We'll probably have some endgame video as well. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.